anh ấy đi làm cẩn thận nhé. Tại vì mấy hôm anh chăm sóc em, công việc của anh là bị trì hoãn lại rồi.
Anh đi làm đi.
Vâng ạ.
Anh đi.
Vâng.
Lát nữa xong thì đi vào đây. Tung à? Em à? Cậu đi đâu rồi? Tôi vừa vào đây xong rồi. Cảm ơn cậu nhé. Tao phải cảm ơn. Việc cũng đâu phải là của cậu à.
The first light of dawn crept through the tattered curtains of Tu Diep's modest farmhouse, spilling a soft golden hue across the weathered wooden floor as the distant crow of a rooster pierced the quiet morning air. CEO James, a man whose broad shoulders bore the weight of a thriving business yet softened with a tender heart, stirred awake on a creaky couch in the corner of the small living room. His dark eyes settled on Tu Diep, still asleep under a thin, faded blanket, her face pale and serene despite the toll of her recent illness, an old wound that had flared up, draining her vitality. The sight stirred a quiet resolve in him. She had been his friend and more for months, and now in her vulnerability, he felt a deeper pull to protect her. Rising with care to avoid waking her, the floorboards groaned under his weight as he padded to the tiny kitchen, the faint crackle of charcoal breaking the silence as he lit the stove to boil water for porridge. The rhythmic clink of a spoon against the pot blended with the soft rustle of leaves outside, a soothing rhythm as he prepared a simple meal, adding a pinch of ginger to ease her discomfort. Once the porridge was ready, its steam rising in delicate curls, he set it aside to cool, casting a glance toward the bedroom where Tu Diep lay, her breathing steady and peaceful. Deciding not to disturb her, he stepped outside into the cool dawn, the crisp air brushing against his skin. In the yard, the chickens clucked eagerly, their feathers ruffling in the gentle breeze as James scattered a handful of rice, the grains glinting in the early light. Nearby, Hockey, Tu Diep's loyal dog with a shaggy coat, wagged his tail furiously, his eyes bright with hunger. "Hungry, huh? Hold on a second, I've got something for you," James murmured, his voice low and soothing as he retrieved a small paper bag of kibble he'd bought from the village store the previous evening. He poured it into Hockey's chipped bowl, the dog's tail thumping against the ground as James gave him a gentle pat. "Eat up, buddy. We're in this together, looking after Diep, all right?" With Hockey settled, James grabbed a worn machete from the shed, its handle smooth from use, and headed to the banana patch at the edge of the property. The dew-soaked grass clung to his sandals as he chopped down a ripe bunch, the sharp blade slicing through the thick stems with a satisfying thud. He carried the bananas back, slicing them into smaller pieces with precision, scattering them for the ducks and chickens, whose quacks and clucks filled the air with a lively chorus. The scene was a quiet harmony of farm life, the sun just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Inside, Tu Diep stirred awake, the faint aroma of ginger and rice tugging her from a restless sleep. Her body ached as she sat up, the thin blanket slipping to her lap, and she shuffled slowly to the kitchen, her steps unsteady but driven by the comforting scent. There, a warm bowl of porridge awaited her on the table, a silent testament to James's care, and a small smile curved her lips despite her fatigue. Just then James returned, wiping his hands on a rag, his face lighting up at the sight of her. "You're awake," he said, his voice warm with relief as he pulled up a chair. "I made breakfast for you. Porridge with ginger to help you feel better. Eat up, then take your medicine, okay? I've already fed the chickens, ducks, and hockey." Tu Diep looked up, her eyes glistening with gratitude as she cradled the bowl. "When did you do all this, James? You must be exhausted." He shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips as he leaned against the table. "This morning while you were resting, I wanted you to have something warm to start the day. Thought it might help." She took a spoonful, the heat soothing her sore throat, and her gaze drifted to a cluster of blooming cacti in the corner, their vibrant flowers a splash of color against the plain walls. "Those cacti you planted, they're beautiful now," James remarked, following her line of sight. Tu Diep nodded, her voice soft with memory. "I put them there a while ago after a tough season. It's nice to see them bloom after all this time." James pulled the chair closer, his tone gentle. "Finish your meal and take your pills. How are you feeling? Still tired? Any pain?" She swallowed another bite, the warmth spreading through her. "I'm better, thanks to you. I'm so grateful, the porridge, the medicine, even Hockey's food. You didn't have to do so much." James waved off her thanks with a modest gesture. "Don't mention it. I ate earlier, so don't worry about me. Just focus on getting stronger. Your health comes first." They sat in a comfortable silence, the clink of her spoon against the bowl mingling with the distant clucks of the chickens and the rustle of leaves outside, until James's expression grew serious, a shadow crossing his face. "I need to head back soon. Work's piling up at the office. I've been away for a few days tending to you, and the paperwork's a mess. I can't ignore it any longer." Tu Diep's gaze softened, noting the faint lines of exhaustion etched into his features, the weight of his responsibilities evident. "The porridge is delicious, James. I hope I'll be well soon. The medicine's bitter though, it's hard to swallow." He chuckled lightly, the sound easing the tension. "Yeah, it's not the best taste, but it'll help. The doctor said 3 pills a day, morning, noon, and night. I was busy with your hospital paperwork last time, running around to get you admitted, so I didn't catch the details then. But I've got it now. Take them after eating, all right?" She nodded, popping a pill into her mouth with a slight grimace, chasing it with a sip of water. "I will. And please don't overwork yourself. You've already done so much for me. I hate seeing you stressed." He stood, brushing off her concern with a reassuring smile. "I'll manage. But you stay inside today. No harvesting or going out in this heat. It's too much for you right now. Maybe tidy up a bit if you feel up to it, but nothing strenuous." Tu Diep glanced toward the cluttered farmyard. The overgrown weeds and scattered tools a reminder of her neglect. "I was thinking of fixing up the farm. It's a mess since I've been sick. The chickens need a cleaner space." James shook his head firmly, his voice carrying a protective edge. "Not today, Diep. Rest first. The farm can wait. I'll come back to check on you after I handle things at the office. Promise me you'll take it easy." With a final wave, he stepped out, the door creaking shut behind him as his car rumbled down the dirt path, kicking up a faint cloud of dust. Tu Diep watched from the window, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and affection. "He cares so much. I think I'm falling for him more every day," she whispered to herself, the words a quiet confession in the empty room. By mid-morning, the sun blazed high overhead, its relentless heat pressing down on Tu Diep's small farm, the air thick with the scent of dry earth and blooming wildflowers. Feeling a flicker of her old energy returning, Tu Diep stepped into the garden, her resolve firm despite her lingering weakness. She grabbed a weathered hoe from the shed, its handle worn smooth by years of use, and began tilling the hard, cracked soil, her movements careful but determined as she prepared to plant new vegetable seeds, tiny green shoots that promised renewal. Sweat beaded on her forehead, trickling down her neck as she worked, her hands steady despite the ache in her muscles, the rhythmic thud of the hoe against the earth a steady beat in the quiet. She paused to wipe her brow, scattering the seeds into the furrows she'd created, when a familiar figure appeared at the garden's edge. Tung, her childhood friend, his rugged features softened by concern as he carried a large, bulging bag of gifts. He paused, watching her with a mix of admiration and worry, the weight of unspoken words in his eyes, before stepping closer. "Diep," he called, his voice cutting through the sound of her labor like a gentle wave. She looked up, startled, and leaned on the hoe, wiping her hands on her apron. "Tung, how long have you been here?" He smiled, setting the bag on a nearby stump with a soft thud. "Just got here. Go wash your hands, I'll wait." Diep nodded, hurrying to the rusty basin near the house to rinse off the dirt. Her curiosity piqued as she returned, her apron dusted with soil. "What brings you today?" Tung's eyes traced her pale face, concern etching deeper lines into his brow. "I heard you were sick. I came to check on you. I stopped by a few days ago but missed you. How are you holding up now?" Diep managed a small, tired smile, brushing a strand of hair from her eyes. "I'm better, thanks for coming. It means a lot." Tung stepped forward, handing her the bag with a careful motion, his voice warm and steady. "I brought some milk to help you recover." thought it might give you a boost. Diep hesitated, her fingers brushing the paper wrapping, touched by the gesture. You didn't have to, Tung. I'm doing okay now. Next time just visit. No gifts needed, really. He chuckled, leaning against a wooden post, the bag rustling as he adjusted it. How's your work going? Things still steady out here? She nodded, glancing at the garden, the neat rows of seeds a small victory against the chaos. I'm tidying up, planting some new vegetables. It's been neglected since I got sick, and I want to bring it back to life. Tung frowned, stepping closer, his shadow falling over her work. You're still weak, Diep. You shouldn't be out here straining yourself. Let me help, you need to rest. She waved him off, her tone firm but kind. I can handle it, it's not much. But if you're free, could you water those plants over there? They need a drink after all this sun. Tung nodded, grabbing a weathered bucket from the shed and heading to the patch she pointed out. The splash of water against the leaves a soft counterpoint to the morning's quiet as he worked. Diep watched him for a moment, her thoughts drifting to James's gentle care. But Tung's presence stirred a quiet unease, a shadow of doubt creeping into her mind. Once the watering was done, Tung set the bucket down with a clank, wiping his hands on his pants as he returned to her side, his gaze lingering. That should be enough for now. Need help with anything else? Diep shook her head, sinking onto a bench, her breath uneven from the effort. No, I'm nearly done. Thanks, Tung, you're a lifesaver. They sat together, the garden stretching out before them, the sun casting long shadows as a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, until Tung's expression grew serious, his voice dropping to a hushed tone. Diep, I've seen you with James. Do you feel burdened by him? I worry you're suffering more than you let on, more than you should. She froze, her hands tightening on the edge of the bench, her heart racing. What do you mean, Tung? He leaned forward, his eyes searching hers, his voice laced with concern. I know you care for him, but that love comes with tears and pain. I've watched you struggle through his absences, his work pulling him away. It's not worth it. Love should bring happiness, not this endless strain. Diep's mind flashed to James's late-night visits, his cooking, his promises, and she felt a pang of conflict. He's told me everything has a price, but if we keep trying, good will come. That's what I believe. That's what keeps me going. Tung shook his head, his tone firm, his hands clenching into fists. Those are empty promises, Diep. Look at what you've endured, the illness, the loneliness. What have you gained? A few kind gestures don't erase the hardship. I just want you to be happy, to see you smile without that weight. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling as she met his gaze. Thank you, Tung. I know you mean well and I appreciate it. But I think my choice is right. I trust James. Tung stood, his eyes sad, a flicker of resignation in them. I hope you're right, Diep. But think about it, really think. You deserve more than this." With that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into the distance, leaving Diep alone with her hoe, her seeds, and a heart heavy with doubt. By late afternoon, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across James's family estate as he returned from a grueling day, the heat still clinging to the air. He stepped into the spacious living room, where his mother, a woman with sharp eyes and a nurturing spirit, handed him a thick stack of ledgers, her face lined with worry. "Check these, James. There's money missing from the accounts," she said, her voice tight with concern as she adjusted her glasses. He nodded, sinking into a chair with a weary sigh, the weight of the day settling on his shoulders. "I'll look into it. Tuan, bring me the wood import files from the 1st, 3rd, and 4th. Send them on Zalo tonight. Make it clear and concise. I've reminded you too many times about this. The paperwork's a nightmare." Tuan, a diligent but flustered assistant, nodded quickly, scurrying off with a muttered, "Yes, sir," as James flipped open the first ledger, his brow furrowing at the jumbled numbers. His mother poured him a glass of water, setting it beside him with a gentle pat. "Done yet? Something wrong at the mill." James rubbed his temples, the tension evident. "The records are a mess. Tuan's list of wood imports is vague, dates and quantities all over the place. It's hard to track losses. I'll visit the mill later to see what's up. I've left Hung and Tuan in charge lately, so I haven't been around much, too focused on Diep." She nodded, her tone softening. "Take your time, but don't let it drag. And James, why not bring Diep here? She needs proper care, not just your visits." He hesitated, his fingers pausing on the page. "I haven't thought about it. She might not want to leave her farm." His mother pressed, her voice firm but kind. "Convince her. Let her recover here where we can look after her. She's important to you, isn't she?" He nodded slowly. "I'll try after the mill, though I'm not sure she'll agree." As he worked, his mother added, "I called Tung earlier. His worker's sick. Have you checked on that?" James shook his head, glancing up. "Not yet. I'll ask at the mill, see how bad it is. I've handled sick workers before, offering support when needed. If it's serious, we'll step in." She smiled, reassured. "Good. And take these supplements for Diep, follow the instructions. She needs strength." James pocketed the small bottle, standing with a stretch. "I'll head out soon. Maybe visit her after the mill." At Tu Diep's farm, he found her in the garden, the neat rows of plants a testament to her earlier efforts, though her face showed fatigue. "Diep, I'm back," he said, holding out the supplements with a warm smile. "I want you to come stay at my place. Rest and recover properly. My mother insists, and I'd feel better knowing you're cared for." Tu Diep hesitated, her eyes darting to the chickens clucking in their coop. I'm better now, and I need to tend the farm, the chickens, the ducks, the garden. I can't leave it all behind. James stepped closer, his voice gentle but insistent. It's no trouble, Diep. Mom wants you there, and I can visit after work. You won't be a burden. Think of it as a break. She relented, her resolve softening. Maybe for a few days then. But I'll come back to the farm soon. As they gathered her things, a small bag of clothes and the supplements, Tung watched from a distance, hidden behind a tree, his heart heavy with jealousy and concern, his shadow a silent witness to their growing bond.
A spa for her. Sitting in the sun at the healthy house spa, I was surrounded by beauty, yet felt sad and empty inside. I had come to spend the first holiday after my husband's death with stranger. I couldn't ima- imagine spending this Thanksgiving with anyone I knew. Giving thanks was completely beyond me. I hoped it. That week would help me heal. After 2 years of caregiving and trying to keep my business go at the same time, I felt like a burned out survival of war. I was just making time until I could join Jack. After all, at 54, what did I have to looking forward to? The future was black. The waiter approached my table asking if I needed anything. To my surprise, I said, yes, if you know anyone here who is rich